NFL Podcast Show. Here are your hosts, Jeff Carrier and Seth Lowe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into the NFL Talking Heads Fantasy Football Podcast Show. I am your host, Jeff Carey. He is Seth Lull. We are streaming live on YouTube, back for another great episode. Seth, we're getting close to the NFL Draft. It should be a really good one. We're projecting anywhere from 5 QBs, 7 wide receivers going in the first round. It's the middle of the offseason. We're recording in early March. What else is better? Where you stand right now with your fantasy football excitement and as we kind of approach the NFL Draft?
Well, I feel well rested. We know we got that, basically a couple months off. We needed it, right? We got the stress of the fantasy football season in the grind.
It's not easy. It's not easy.
No, the struggle is real.
The struggle is real.
Yeah, so we're back. We're back at it. We got an article we're going to talk about on NFLTalkingHeads.com. So everybody should go and check it out. It's never too early to start talking about fantasy football, even in March. So yeah, and like you said, or you just touched on in the intro, the draft is going to be really good for fantasy, especially if you're in like a dynasty league, rookie drafts. It's going to be pretty bonkers with all these quarterbacks and receivers going in the first round.
Yeah, so I'll kind of touch on a couple new things heading into the 2020 season for Seth and I. We just redid and dropped our new website, hoping to accomplish a few new things with that. So feel free to visit that at NFLTalkingHeads.com. Seth wrote a new article on his 5 way too early players. And as Seth mentioned, it's never too early to talk about fantasy football because Seth, at this point, we're always going to be right? No one's going to remember what we say in March, So it's fun. It's a good exercise. It's also good to do a little bit of research this early because later on in the year we're going to remember some of the stats and some of the reasons why we like someone more organically versus just kind of listening to the crowd or maybe doing too much research into the statistics and so forth, or maybe reading too much into offseason moves. So this is kind of a good time to get some of the players and just looking at them, I think, from a more organic eyeball, whatever you want to call it, kind of point of view. The other thing is, I guess from this time moving forward, we're going to be in front of the camera. We'll try and do some scheduled live streams so that everyone can actually watch live and then message us, of course. So that will be a big thing. But go over to our YouTube, which is at NFL Talking Heads, of course. Catch us there live. Seth and I will have to get more comfortable making sure we're looking at the camera, right, Seth? But let's go ahead and get right into fantasy football. That's what we do best here. So why don't we pull up your article, Seth, and go ahead and give us an idea of what you were thinking in terms of why someone kind of fit into the top 5, like what you were looking for. Why do you like them early? Like, is there specific things on, did they have an underperforming year last year? Did they, were they young? I mean, kind of give us an idea of maybe if there were certain things you were looking for, and then kick off the list.
I don't think there's any one thing that I looked at, but I think one common theme that I'm seeing is players that underperformed relative to their draft position going into the year. So I looked at players that still had good seasons. A couple of these guys we're going to talk about didn't, but for the most part, these players had solid seasons, but they still underperformed slightly, based on where you drafted them. So I'm picking players that were coming off slightly off years, but I'm still really on. Like, I still really like them. Yeah. I'm still really bullish on them. And I look at it as, like when the market dips, it's a great buying opportunity. Right? So people, while a lot of people are running away, it's a great buying opportunity for people that want to stay in the market. I look at that. I take that same approach with a lot of these players, and they range from, like, there's a player we're going to talk about that had a really disastrous year, and I'm not really that worried at all. And then another player that, if we're nitpicking, he had a slightly off year, and I think you can get him a few spots later. So it's a pretty big variance, but just in general, I think players that are coming off seasons and players that I like relative to like where you're going to get them, like their ADP. Like ADP, and granted, the ADPs you really can't look at ADPs right now; it's not very accurate. So you gotta kind of use a little bit of common sense and kind of think in your head where, in several months where they're going to go, and we'll get into like what I mean when we talk about some of these players. But yeah, you want me to jump into it with my first guy?
Yeah, no, I think just in terms of some of the comments that you made, that is in line with, in terms of a lot of our philosophies, right? Maybe they had a little bit of a down year, not overthinking it, someone that you can get at probably a value that has a history of doing things. So sounds like a lot of talking heads-esque type of philosophies there. Jump into it.
That it is. So my first guy is Davante Adams, and he's someone that I loved going into this last season. I've liked him for a while for good reason. He's an absolute stud. And he didn't have a terrible season, but he got off to a slow start. He had the injury. And he really poured it on strong. I put him in the article over his last 10 games. So including 2 playoff games, so those 10 games, which is more than half a year, he finished with 75 catches, 917 yards, and 7 touchdowns. That's over the last 10 games, including the 2 playoff games. So when you average that out, those are essentially career high numbers or right in line with his best season. So, again, basically 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns, 75 catches. So that's number one. Like, he actually finished like an absolute house on fire. And then the second thing, one of the other points I make on Davante Adams is Aaron Jones had this is the first year that Green Bay had a running back completely go off. So Aaron Jones had 16 rushing touchdowns, 19 total on the season. There's no reason to believe that that's going to continue and happen again. So I just think if Aaron Jones regresses to the mean, instead of 19 total touchdowns, he gets like 13 or 14. I think, and touchdowns is never the issue with Davante Adams anyways, right? But I just think that Aaron Jones regressing to the mean a little bit will help Davante Adams. Combine that with his hot finish, and the fact that like this guy is on pretty much every year is a lock for 10 plus touchdowns. Each of the 3 previous seasons he had 10 or more touchdowns. So I'm really bullish on Davante Adams. He's still only 27 years old. He still has Aaron Rodgers. And let's face it, you're not like, I'm not suggesting that Davante Adams, because of slow start, is going to drop to the 3rd round. He's still somebody that's a fringe, like a late first, early second guy. My prediction is, like I put in the article, is he's going to be around like 111, 112. So if you're in a 12-team league, one of the last picks in the first round. But he's somebody that could easily go at the beginning of the 2nd round, which would be like silly value.
Yeah, I think the making predictions at this point was quite tough with the ADPs. We were actually taking a little bit of a look at the ADPs and thought to ourselves, man, if we can jump into a best ball at this time of the year, this almost seems like a really good opportunity. There were some really wonky ADPs, either someone being super high or someone not being really low, or being way too low, and just the market is in a weird spot. Of course, who knows how accurate those numbers are, but we're doing a bit of off-season research, and so keep that in mind. But someone like Davante Adams, I think you're spot on that late first. He's kind of nestled in there just like he was last year. Still had a productive year. Didn't have a killer season like Michael Thomas. So we don't expect him to be in the top 5. But he has that name value. He has Aaron Rodgers, so he's still going to go around the turn, which does provide the value because you can count on those points. And it's kind of where Michael Thomas was going last year, right? And a lot of people, including I made a stupid move of going ahead and drafting Juju over Michael Thomas last year because I was like, well, I'm going for pure upside here. Well, we know how that worked out. And so in terms of sticking to our true nature of give me the points, I don't think there is many better candidates outside of the super elite top 5 players that you can really find, especially if he goes in the early 2nd, to your point, that can fit he's got outside, he's got consistency, he stays relatively healthy. I don't know if you went over his games played over the years, but Yeah, I like it. Not a ton of touchdowns last year, like you mentioned, so you really can't expect him to be any lower than that. Didn't have a touchdown for the last 6 weeks of the season, and I think there's going to be kind of a regression to the mean there when it comes to their running backs with touchdown totals.
Yeah, I just love his value because even if he goes in the first round, he's gonna probably go behind Hopkins. I like him just as much as Hopkins. I mean, Devonta Adams he only played in 10 games last season. He was on pace for over 100 catches, over 1,100 yards, and like 7 touchdowns. You look at DeAndre Hopkins' numbers last year in 15 games: 104 catches, 1,100 plus receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns. So to me, I'm just like, I'll take whatever receiver goes later. That's why, if you have like the 9th or 10th pick. You hope one of them falls to you. Clearly, Michael Thomas is the number 1 receiver in fantasy. Not even that close. But Devonta Adams, Hopkins, I think they're basically like they're neck and neck. They're very even. So I'll be very happy with getting Devonta Adams end of the first round.
Yeah, and just to kind of confirm, I don't think, but just to kind of run it by you, they're probably going to need some wide receiver help. You would have to think that they had a lot of receivers. They thought one of them would kind of step up with NVS. Drama Allison, Jimmy Graham's just not really that capable. Even if they bring someone in,
not worried about it. Yeah, I'm not
worried about it because there's enough volume. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and again, like they had a ton of touchdowns to Aaron Jones as well. He was involved a ton in the red zone. So, and Aaron Jones will still be a factor, but I like Adams. Adams to me is like as sure as you get. He's slightly poor man's Michael Thomas. Can't go wrong. Love him.
Yep.
So he's the guy I have the highest. The only player I have on this list that has the potential to go in the first round. The rest are more under the radar players. So my second player that I have here, it might be the most controversial one. So shall we get this one out of the way?
Let's do it.
So I have Dave Montgomery here. And his ADP was, in the 3.07, I think it was, so middle of the third round. My prediction, I put here 4th round. I think that's really, really generous. I think you could see him anywhere. I think 4th round would be like the high water mark for David Montgomery. I can't see his stock going much higher. Like he's not going to go in the 3rd round. I could easily see him draw, depending on what the Bears do in the draft. If they add any running backs, who knows? This is based under the assumption that they're going to stand pat, and no crazy changes at the quarterback or anything. So, assuming you can get Montgomery late 4th, early 5th, I don't mind it. He's a rookie last year. Their offense, with Montgomery, it's not a sexy pick, and I don't. This is the player. This is my least favorite player on this list. I could easily make the opposite case, right? But I think with David Montgomery, the Bears' offense is not going to be as bad as it was last season, right? He was a rookie, and I really think that a little bit more volume for David Montgomery would help. So
more volume?
More volume.
I'm assuming you're looking at his run totals. 242 carries. I mean, I can't imagine you can expect and hope for a lot more than that.
I would hope for a little more volume, and volume also in the passing game. So I use the example. I'm reading through here. So I use the example of Leonard Fournette and Zeke, where they each finished with 36 catches or fewer in their first 2 seasons before finishing with over 70 catches in their 3rd season. So they made that big jump. So this is only Dave Montgomery's 2nd season, but ultimately I think he has to be a guy that catches between 50 and 70 balls. I think he can be that guy. They drafted him in the 3rd round to be that guy as more of a balanced all-around running back. And you still have Tariq Cohen, which it doesn't seem like they really use him properly yet. He catches like 80 balls a year. So I expect Dave Montgomery to make a jump in catches, and I expect him this year to. And I made the same case about Kerryon Johnson, and he got injured. So who knows if I was right on the right path with that one. But Dave Montgomery is someone that I think there's no reason why, just given the offense slightly improving, even marginally. He was 6th in the NFL last year with carries inside the 5-yard line with 14. So he's going to fall in the end zone a couple more times, right? So his touchdown totals will go up a tick, and he's going to make the jump to 40 to 50 catches this year. If he can do that, increase his touchdown total a little bit. I mean, they drafted him in 3rd round for a reason. They traded Jordan Howard for a reason, so I like him. He's not the sexiest player, but we're talking about a starting running back.
Yeah, I
the
think
fourth,
that you
fifth
can.
round.
I think that you can make a good point. If he's going in the fourth round, I'm trying to think last year, just off the top of my head. That
Like
was
Lamar Miller. It was like where Lamar Miller was going last year, or it was Lamar Miller going a little bit later.
I think Lamar Miller was going later, but I was thinking more like
Not too much later.
Well, it's tough. Lamar Miller got hurt, kind of. I guess not that early in the preseason, but Josh Jacobs for a while was in the fourth round. He's ended up creeping up into late third, but Josh Jacobs reminds me of like that fourth round player. I'm trying to think of who else was in there. I think Derrick Henry was in there, if I remember correctly.
I think the case for Dave Montgomery to make it like really simple is he's going to be a running back like Lamar Miller, like Kerryon Johnson, or maybe a poor man's Kerryon Johnson, or what Kerryon Johnson was supposed to be. That's going to do a little bit of everything. Like he's not a perfect RB1, which is why he's not going to be an RB1. You're not going to be drafting him in the first or second round. But he's going to get you some catches. He's going to get some touchdowns. He's going to get touches. Like he's going to give you a little bit of everything, and he's going to be like a higher floor running back. He's not going to be explosive. He's not going to have many big weeks, but he's going to get volume when you add in. Like he's going to get catches. He's going to get carries. He's going to do so. He's not going to be like the Tariq Cohen type who relies purely on receptions. And same thing with like James White. He's also not going to be one of those backs that gets 20 carries and gets no catches. So I think he's going to have that balance. And I think potentially if you're getting him late fourth, early fifth, there's going to be some value there, especially considering he's a second-year player. So, but I will say that he on this list, the players we're going to go over, he's the player that I am the least bullish about.
Yeah, well, I could tell you. I mean, I think maybe your kids are running around screaming in fright of this announcement. But I think that you made some good points, and now not someone that I was too in favor of, but you look at the numbers and you say, you have to go with what their actions are too, which is they don't have a first or a second round draft to draft in Trubisky. They have a lot of positions that they could probably fill, and they go and draft David Montgomery with their third pick, which is their first available pick in the draft. So they like him a lot. He can catch the ball. I mean, that was one of the things coming out of, I believe, Iowa. He was coming out of, or Iowa State. So he could increase from 25 to 40, without even thinking about it if they just gave him the opportunity. There's a lot to look at here and say, well, is this the floor? Really bad offense, 3.7 yards per carry, 6 touchdowns, 25 carries, and that's with a healthy Tariq Cohen and the worst offense that you could imagine from Chicago. Going outside the top 3 rounds, I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot to be said there, in terms of value.
Especially for people that have, a lot of times I end up with no running backs in the first 2 or 3 rounds. And so you get your stud wide receivers, maybe a stud tight end, and then you're like, I just want a running back who's just going to get touches, kind of like the Lamar Miller type, and play it safe that way.
Yeah.
We'll see how much of his upside and a lot of these things are baked into his average draft position. Does a lot of this stuff, his average draft position, end up being reflective of the fact that people see him, improving in his second season? But if you're basing it on what he did last year and how bad that offense probably will be again, maybe not as bad, but I am on here trying to put a mixture of different types of players. So take it for what it's worth. David Montgomery.
I think if there were any haters out there, I think you did a good job breaking it down and giving it a good pitch, for sure. I think you have to look at it, when you really look at the numbers and think about the other circumstances.
So my third player, Zach Ertz. So I want to there's actually a lot of tight ends. This is going to be a big tight end year. And I'm gonna like a lot of tight ends this season. Love Zach Ertz. How can you not? Very similar to like Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams had the injury. Ertz was healthy. Had a really, really slow start to the season. I'm going to be really bullish on a lot of the Eagles players. And I think you and I both are going to really like Carson Wentz. So I like Zach Ertz as well. Another really solid season. What are your initial thoughts? When I mentioned Zach Ertz, now he was 3.09 was the ADP. End of the third round, early fourth. I think he's going in the 5th round, and I know it's early, But to the extent that we can make any guesses on ADPs, I think he's a 5th-round player this year.
Yeah, I think he's going to have to be a 5th-round player, and I don't think he'll start there maybe, but he's most certainly going to end up there just through the nature of the position, for one. I mean, if Hunter Henry came out of, basically never performing a full year and after another full season off and then, still sliding into the 5th, 6th round last year, I mean, if that's what Hunter Henry was doing, Zach Ertz is going to be there. The guy that caught over 100 balls 2 years ago and still managed to catch 88 balls last year. So this is what we're disappointed about. I think this is the beauty spot you wanted to grab someone like Zach Ertz because, maybe there's a little bit of inconsistency. Maybe he's not going to catch a ton of touchdowns. Dallas Goedert's going to snake some games away from him. And that's where last year we talked a little bit about it. It's like, his price got way too pricey. And now I think we're going to get into a nice, comfortable fifth. He's a 5th-round player that everyone's going to want in the 5th round, right? He's like the perfect 5th-round player. Like you don't want to overreach in the 4th, and you most certainly don't want to miss him in the 5th. So it's going to be like first come, first grab.
Yeah, and if you look at, what I love when players catch fire and they finish the season strong, especially if they're a player that they normally have good seasons. So it's one thing if it's a player that comes out of nowhere like a Devontae Parker last year, who I also like, by the way, but different conversation for a different day.
Typical Seth. Let me just slide in a few extra people so I can bring them up in the future. Oh, he almost made my way too early playlist. So...
Yeah, so, I mean, look at the last 7 games for Zach Ertz. Almost half a season, 51 catches, 492 yards, 5 touchdowns. I mean, you average that out. I know you can't do that because part of the reason, you can't just overlook his slow start. But at the same time, that's much more in line with, look at the previous season, 2018, he had 116 catches, 1,100-plus yards, 8 touchdowns. My point is, I think he's much closer to the 2018 Zach Ertz than he is to the Zach Ertz last year, who only had 6 touchdowns and under 1,000 yards. He still had 88 catches last year, by the way. And like this season 2 of Philadelphia was also really weird where, it was a really not a great season for Carson Wentz. His first full year coming off the injury. Their receivers were completely decimated. I would like to see them a little bit healthier at their skill positions. And I think this is going to be a big year for Carson Wentz. I think he's going to be one of my favorite quarterbacks. So Zach Ertz in the 5th round is a steal.
Could I make the argument or see what the rebuttal is playing devil's advocate?
Sure.
You look at the numbers, you think about the last year, and this is why I think it's really important to really understand. Like if you look at this just as a whole and you only look at numbers, you're only getting one picture. So the picture I want to throw back to you is by having watched the season, knowing Philly, etc., there's a lot of games there that are filled with decimated wide receiving core. I mean, no one is playing. Alshon Jeffrey misses most of the season because that's what he does. Assuming they, try and revitalize that position and do a little bit better job this year, how much can you contribute to, Zach Ertz really having maybe only a quote-unquote good outcome of numbers, a number year, because of the, decimated numbers around it? It kind of reminds me at a different position, but when Garrett Blount ran for 18 touchdowns, then everyone else thought a New England running back can run for 18 touchdowns. When the truth is that everyone died around LeGarrette Blount, and they had to use him that year. And it's a little different with Zach Ertz because he's still Zach Ertz and whatnot, but let's face it, they got a second tight end. There was no other wide receivers. I'm just playing devil's advocate, so I'm throwing that back to you.
Yeah, so you're saying he should have racked up more. I mean, he had 88.
I'm not saying he should have racked up more. I'm just saying this number could have been a lot worse. These numbers look good.
Yeah.
But say they have a sound, a sound wide receivers around him, and let's face it, the last 1, 2, 3, 4 games, the last month, probably when Miles Sanders started catching fire. Let's call it the last. You can go even before that. I mean, he didn't have a 100-yard game until Chicago, which was out in November. After that, he didn't have another 100-yard game for the rest of the season and only caught 1 touchdown. Yep, I think your audio's off. You still on mute?
No, sorry, hey man. Yeah, I think that's fair. I just think with Zach Ertz, my biggest thing is just he's going to go around later, and I like him just as much as I did last season. So the Eagles, all the other things with the Eagles' offense are tough to predict. Their receivers, even when healthy, aren't great. So there's such a lot of volatility with the Eagles' offense. I'm just basing this on he's going to go around later, and I like him just as much, and he's still 29. I still think we get one more really good year out of Zach Ertz.
Yeah, again, I'm going to like Zach Ertz. When I opened up, I think he's going to be the perfect fifth-round player if that's the case. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Fair. Thanks for you're the devil's advocate person, Jeff. Devil's advocate carry.
Yeah, I definitely played that role pretty well on that one. So, yep.
All right.
Then we have your last player here.
We got my last player.
You sure you don't want to throw in a few extras?
I mentioned one player's name in passing. Relax. I got. This is a guy I think you're gonna like.
Okay.
I saved the best for last. Darius Slayton.
I thought you had someone else on your list.
I
mean, I don't want someone to go to the.
You know what?
I don't want to go.
Nope. Sorry. So he's not. I got one more player after this.
Oh, you got two more.
Tease that out there.
Okay.
So Darius Slayton, undrafted last year. So he's a player that was a waiver wire extraordinaire, a player that we had on our one of our waiver wire pickups. I had several shares of him, and you made fun of me.
I did.
I literally had him in every league, and then I dropped him in almost every league, and then he blew up, which is what tends to happen. My prediction is he's going to be this is a guy who could really, his ADP is impossible to predict. It could be anywhere from like the 7th round to like the 9th, 10th round.
Yeah.
He was the best Giants receiver last year. In a year where, Golden Tate had the suspension, missed the first 4 games. You had Sterling Shepard with the concussion injuries. Or the concussion situation, he missed a few games. You had Evan Ingram miss time, who Evan Ingram always misses time every year. Saquon had injuries. You had the quarterback change from Eli Manning to Daniel Jones, and Darius Slayton he had a very solid season. He was their big play guy, and I think looking ahead this year for all those reasons I just mentioned, there's going to be injuries like the Sterling Shepard situation is very up in the air. You have Evan Ingram, who it can never play 16 games. Golden Tate, they're probably going to cut Golden Tate. So I think it's very realistic to think that Darius Slayton is going to start the year as their number one receiver in a year where you're going to have Daniel Jones be the second-year starter. I think Saquon is going to – I'm really high on Saquon this year as well. I think Saquon having a really, really bounce-back, type of third season in the NFL is going to help Darius Slayton. So I like Slayton as more of a mid to late round sleeper player that's going to make a big jump. I mean, everybody talks about, and rightfully so, the Deebo Samuels, DK Metcalfs of the world, the AJ Browns. No one is talking about Darius Slayton. I think Darius Slayton is a sleeper, kind of the unsung hero of the rookie class. I think he has a pretty good second season.
Yeah, I like everything about that analysis. There's a lot of youth there. There's not a lot of other receivers you think you can really rely on. Let's see who will actually be coming back for receivers. I mean, Daniel Jones in the second year. New head coach, really undetermined, but can't get any worse than last year. So ADP is going to be big. I think the number you said is spot on. And assuming he's in there, that's a perfect flyer range. What might get a little tricky is not assuming he'll be as sexy as Chris Godwin was this past year, but that's what happened with Chris Godwin. He was way back in the 8th and went in the 4th. Does Darius Slayton start in the 10th and go to the 7th? That's fine. Does he start in the 7th and creep up a round and a half? That's going to be the question. So,
I mean, he just at that point in the draft, you're not really investing a ton, and he's got upside. I mean, he led the league, or not the league. He led the Giants in yards and touchdowns. 8 touchdowns for a rookie is pretty good.
Yeah, very good,
especially on a bad offense with a rookie quarterback.
We're always looking for catches. I'm always looking for catches, right? Like, because catches means you're on the field, you're running routes, and I'm always looking for like 30 catches, right? And how many catches did you have last year?
48 in 14 games, so very good. You're absolutely right. Catches is much more important of a stat as like a barometer for how important were they? Like how quickly did they adjust to the NFL, and like can they get on the field? Because you could get 6 or 7 touchdowns and have like 18, 19 catches and just be on the field for some red zone. And
it reminds me a lot of, and granted, he had a lot more touchdowns, so we'll see how this evaluation goes, but it reminds me a lot of DJ Moore. We liked DJ Moore coming out last year. We liked him a lot. We liked him a lot more than Curtis Samuel, because Curtis Samuel, first of all, had already 2 years, had an injury, and DJ Moore comes out and had I forget how many catches his rookie year, but I mean, it was, it was probably in the 40s or something. It was a really nice number, a very solid number of you're on the field, you're running routes. And when you see that, there's almost always a big jump. But it's hard to predict it in fantasy. So a lot of times you get these players that are like have a rookie floor of 50 catches that you're getting in round 6, 7, 8 that are just a free gamble, because they're almost streamable players regardless if they just keep the same production, yet they have tremendous upside return. And
I just like the Giants' offense in general for whatever reason. And it's March, so it's early. I could change my mind by August, but
sure.
I like
Seth.
Saquon.
You like to change it from week to week too. There's always that.
Yeah. Hey, when I change my mind, I actually will admit when I make a mistake or change my mind. I'm not married to my ideas, to my opinions.
Okay.
And it's March. These players, it's the Giants. I like the Giants this year. I like Saquon. I like Daniel Jones. I like Slayton. Come on, 7th to 9th round, can't go wrong there. So I like him. He's got upside. Mm-hmm. Like I said, for our bigger bench strategy, going to be some high floor guys, some veteran guys that you're going to want to go for. Darius Slayton fits the higher upside, swing for the fences type player that you want for your bench, and he might be somebody like a good flex play. All right, my last player. You know why I'm messing that up? I messed that up is because they're numbered 1-1-1. You number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to blame that on you.
Listen,
so anyway,
I took your article and I copied and pasted it. That's my issue.
Well, you need to do a great job proofreading. So
proofreading your job. I mean, you're the article writer, yet I got to do additional work by proofreading, re-editing your numbers. I get it. I gotta
put the mute button on. There's like a stampede going on up there. It's like
hopefully
it's like the Lion King in my house here.
I like how we can provide some video context now. I mean, you can't see the kids running around, but it does look like someone is falling on top of Seth, so that's fun.
They'd be doing me a favor. Put me out of my misery. All right, so my last player. Fifth player on the list, Adam Thielen. So I think we're going to have some disagreements on Adam Thielen. So his average draft position was 211 last year. He's someone
211.
Like end of the second, third round, depending on I think I got him in one of our leagues in the third round in a 12-team, 2-quarterback league.
2 QB league, yeah.
Or fourth round, actually.
No, third round.
Third round. So he was someone, end of the second, early third guy. Nothing went right for Adam Thielen. So, I mean, the way I look at this, same thing with Zach Ertz and Devontae Adams, is I like Adam Thielen just as much, pretty much, as I did going into last season. I'm throwing everything out the window that happened last season. He had, like, nothing went right from him. It was a completely perfect storm of just crap for Adam Thielen. You had Dalvin Cook, who was remarkably healthy all season long. Minnesota finally just stuck, really committed to the run. Dalvin Cook had an MVP season. He's going to go in the top 5 in drafts this year. So that wasn't going to be good for Adam Thielen. Number 2, Adam Thielen had the hamstring injury and missed a lot of time last year. And on top of that, like, let's face it, when he did play, he wasn't great. So I just look at it like in the
it's a ringing endorsement side, of a shitstorm he hit in 2019.
Yeah, but the way I look at it, though, I'm looking at it like the glass is half full with Adam Thielen for the same reasons that we just went over with Zach Ertz. I mean, this isn't a flash in the pan. He had one good year type guy, and then he fell back down to earth. The previous 2 seasons he played. So the previous 4 seasons he played. Let me correct that a third time. The previous 5 seasons, so every other year in his career, he's played full 16 games. The previous 2 seasons before the car crash of his 2019 season, he had over 90 catches, over 1,200 yards. So, I think he's much closer to that guy, and he's gonna turn 30 in August. I'm not too worried about the age for at least this season with Adam Thielen. I see him as somebody who's going to be in the 6 to 10 range for touchdowns. He's going to have over 1,000 yards, and he's going to have over 85 catches. I think those are very fair, realistic, projections for Adam Thielen. He's going to have over 80 catches. He's going to have over 1,000 yards, and he's going to have a chance to get in the 7 to 8 to 9 touchdown range. And he's somebody that you're going to get later, which is good. It's a good buying opportunity if you're a believer in Adam Thielen like I am. So there's no way he goes in the first 3 rounds. I think he goes in the 4th round, maybe late 4th. But I think that's good value for Adam Thielen, who I still think has some juice.
Okay, so we most certainly disagree on this one. And when we usually disagree this early, I'm usually always right. I mean, I can never forget the year that you were still on Adrian Peterson after missing a season, or forget when it was, or the Cam Newton fiasco a couple years ago. We were on him like back in March. And I'm going to assure you that by the time August comes around, you're going to be on my side because I'm going to do a little bit better forecasting than you. And this is where we should be able to separate ourselves on the podcast, because I don't like the statement of for the last 5 years he was this receiver. Well, you know what? For the last 5 years, at one point, AJ Green was one receiver until he wasn't. He hit shitstorm after shitstorm, but most importantly, it was a change of the team. It was just a multitude of things. So my first question would be, what about the 2019 Vikings do you think is going to be different about the 2020 Vikings?
I mean, I think the Vikings. I think it was a bad season across the board. I mean, the question is, do you think a player can have a bad season? You can bring up the AJ Green. You can bring up a bunch of examples of players that when what's the saying? When the wheels fell off, they really fell off, or like when it really it came back down to earth, the bottom dropped really quickly. But there's also a lot of examples where a player had a bad season, and I mean he missed 6 games. Still had 6 touchdowns. I just think Adam Thielen is a good receiver.
Okay,
very good
not,
receiver.
This is not really answering my question.
I don't think the Vikings offense. They lost Kevin Stefanski, so they have a new offensive coordinator. I don't think the offense necessarily needs to change too much, other than Adam Thielen has to be on the field and catch more passes. And
which one is it? Like, be on the field or be on the field and catch more passes? Because for me, that's different. If he's just on the field, right? If we're talking about he is just on the field for all of 2019, I think we look at his 2019 completely different. This is where I'm going with this, okay? Because first of all, we can look at his first 6 games, okay? If you average out those receptions, which was only one game that was over 100 yards, or only one game over 75 yards to that effect. If you look at those first 6 games, he's on pace for catching 69 passes. And you might say, well, that's not too bad. Sure, that's not that bad. I don't hate that. I'm not drafting someone who catches 69 passes in the 4th round either. And then you can look at when he got healthy and he played in the playoffs. He played 2 games in the playoffs. They were behind Seattle in losing all game and only caught 3 passes. So my whole point is he could have been healthy all of 2019 and his outlook would be horrendous. Because he got hurt, there is this veil of uncertainty that you're trying to, and I'm sure others are going to do the same, looking at his history. Oh, let's look at his history. How about we look at what Minnesota did trying to throw the ball? They were the 3rd least team in pass attempts, only behind Tennessee and Baltimore. Who would you rather have, A.J. Brown or Adam Thielen?
Adam Thielen. It's actually, and that's actually a good question, because I don't think it's too far.
Right.
I think it's pretty close.
Where is A.J. Brown going to go, though? Is A.J. Brown a 4th round wide receiver?
I don't know. I mean, I have to look at. I mean, I think A.J. Brown is.
My whole point is A.J. Brown was a beast as a rookie, and should be going ahead of Adam Thielen. No doubts. He's got the upside.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I think both things can be true. I like AJ Brown too, actually. I just think with Adam Thielen, listen, the previous 2 seasons were really good. I still really high on Adam Thielen as a player, and you're also assuming that if he played those 6 games that he missed, you're also assuming that the results would have been really bad too. Like, what if he had a stretch like Devontae Adams had, and he finished in the high 70s for catches? By the way, he would have finished with over 10 touchdowns, most certainly. And it still would have been a down season, but I'm still not going to just write him off because the previous 2 seasons were really good. I like him. The offense, I think, and again, 5th round, 4th round, middle 4th round, wherever he goes, that's going to be really, really good value for someone like Adam Thielen.
I mean, obviously value is going to be a big thing here because we're talking about someone who, even when he didn't really play all that well for the first 6 games, was still on pace for 69 catches. I get it. So the value in the ADP is going to be huge here. I just think his upside is going to be extremely limited. It doesn't even matter if Dalvin Cook gets hurt anymore. They've got Alexander Madison right behind him. We saw that last year. So I just think that you make a good point. I'm assuming that the rest of the season he wouldn't have caught a little bit of extra fire, but knowing Minnesota, knowing Mike Zimmer, he finally got to put in place what he's always wanted. He has now 2 running backs. There's nothing there to tell me that something's going to change. Adam Thielen finally gets hurt one time. I think he'll probably have a healthy season next year, but that doesn't mean he's going to have a uberly successful season. That's my thought analysis there. So you're on mute.
And if I was this mute button. If I was if all fair points, if I was ranking these players we just went over in terms of like who I feel the best about in terms to on a scale of like Dave Montgomery is I feel the worst about out of this list. I put him on like in terms of players that I'm gonna have the most shares of. Dave Montgomery, I could see myself having the fewest shares of him. Devontae Adams, Zach Ertz would be 1 and 2. Adam Thielen, though, I think I might put him ahead of Darius Slayton. I think he might be 3rd, Darius Slayton 4th, and then Montgomery 5th. I just think a lot of people are going to feel about Thielen like you're feeling about Thielen. And I just think, hey, if I can get him in the 4th round, and the A.J. Brown example is really good. I think A.J. Brown might go ahead of Thielen. But if you're looking at is the complete opposite, young and upside, older and maybe less upside, but
well, and this is why I brought that up because it's still a little early right now. But my whole thinking is A.J. Brown should be going in front of Adam Thielen as far as I'm concerned today. And if you look at like an ADP or something like that, and because of Adam Thielen's record and just knowing that Tennessee doesn't quote unquote pass a lot, and if A.J. Brown is going, let's say in the back end of the 4th round or the 5th round, that to me should auto define where Adam Thielen is. That means he needs to keep dropping back. If that's the case,
let's look right now. Fantasy Football Calculator, PPR, ADPs, and then again, this
March
might be
March 6th. Here we go. Let's rip this up.
Well, we're in March. What are we gonna do? Just not. I mean, it's
no. I love this. I'm not chastising at all.
Adam Thielen 4.02. And A.J. Brown's 5.08. So if that's the case,
I talk about this all the time. This is why I am who I am. One person in Talking Heads Nation called me the differentiator because I could predict the stuff off the top of my head because I know the analysis.
Yeah, I mean, I do think though that Adam Thielen. I think I can see A.J. Brown is going to rise. He's going to be someone that rises the closer you get to drafts.
I agree because people are not doing. They're not getting their work done.
And Adam Thielen's. It's like a politician running for president who has 100% name ID. That's Adam Thielen.
Right.
Like everything is baked in the cake with Adam Thielen. A.J. Brown is the politician that you don't really know much about. He starts getting these appearances on CNN, having rallies. He's on TV, and people get to know him. He's like the Pete Buttigieg.
You're really banging the mic over there for.
A.J. Brown is like the Pete Buttigieg if Pete Buttigieg actually had support and people liked him. So that's my 2 cents. So yeah, A.J. Brown. I think he'll go in the 4th round for sure.
Okay. Well. I think that's going to be our March 6th episode recap. Check out the article online. Share it. Go to our blog, NFLTalkingHeads.com. Visit us on social. We've got a YouTube channel that we'll be actually utilizing now, live streaming. So go there and subscribe. So when we go live, you will get a notification, and then you can actually jump on live and message us and ask us questions live. So that's what we'll start doing, obviously, as more people tune in as we get closer to the fantasy football season. We have some upcoming episodes on Seth's early hate list.
I'll teaser alert. I'm not going to put this guy on my list, but there's someone that I want to put on my list who will probably be an honorable mention, and his name rhymes with Hammy Lotkins.
The honorable Hammy Lotkins. He's got to make it. He's kind of the person that when I think the butt fumble won the worst SportsCenter top 10 30 weeks in a row. They just had to retire it. So that's always an honorable mention. That's how it is with Sammy Watkins for us on that list. We're also going to recap the path players from 2019. That's something new that we released last year. We released a system that focused on with a arbitrary value system of players that felt that they hit a specific criteria to succeed in the upcoming season, as in having a history of performing consistently well at their position in terms of landing as a wide receiver 2 or running back 2 or tight end 1. Their team that they play on, if they're on a high-scoring team, and their age and their health if they could play games. So there was only, I forget how many players. We're going to recap it. There was an X amount of players that fit that category last year. We released that list for free, kind of do some evaluation. We're going to see how many people was on the list and actually had a good season. So I'm excited about that one, Seth. And then, of course, we've got the NFL draft, which should be a big one. We're going to do our analysis. We're going to do our research. With Seth in his dynasty leagues, Seth, you got a lot of picks in one of our leagues, an overabundant amount. So I can't wait to see how you screw that up.
Man, this is random. I'll leave you with this.
Please do.
It's kind of like the opposite of an opening question to a closing question.
Okay.
My dream scenario is, because I have Devontae Parker as a keeper in one of my leagues. Jameis Winston to go to Miami. And my question to you is,
that sounds like a good fit.
It sounds like a really good fit. He gets to stay in Florida. If Jameis Winston went to Miami, true or false, Devontae Parker would be a middle second rounder minimum.
In terms of where he would actually go, or he should be valued there?
Jameis Winston, the wide receiver whisperer, would catapult Devontae Parker to the second round.
Well, we'll leave food for thought for everyone to think about that.
You're not going to answer that? You have to answer it. Would he be a second? Yeah,
He will not be. He will not be. There's too many good players to risk relying on Jameis Winston completing a full season being a starter. He will not be.
All right. I'll leave everybody with that.
All right. We're the NFL Talking Heads. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the NFL Talking Heads Fantasy Football Podcast Show. Try saying that 3 times fast. With your hosts, Jeff Carrier and Seth Lowe. We'll catch you next time.